Hi, my name is Amanda Ludi, and today we're going to have a quick tutorial on how to paint trees. There are lots of different ways to paint trees. However, the way I'm going to teach you is pretty fun. We're going to be using our flat angle brush and our round brush, and we're going to go over little tips on how to make it look realistic. A lot of times people will make an easy mistake where you make your branches a lot thicker than your trunk. So we're going to go over certain ways on how to keep in mind how to paint them so you make it look realistic, and certain tricks on how to fill up a tree with leaves really fast without having to do each little individual branch off of it. So stay tuned, this will be fun. Hi everyone, this is Amanda doing a tutorial on how to draw trees. Well, in this case, we'll be painting it. I'm going to be using my angled flat brush, and you may find you also might want to use your round brush, this one here, or your detailed brush as well. And I'll give you guys some tips on how to use these, but the first one I want to do is show you how to do them with an angled flat brush. I love angled flat brushes for the reason that that nice pointed tip on it, you can use it for so many different strokes. If you push real hard onto your canvas, it makes a thick line. If you push really soft, it makes a little thin line. I'll show you right here. We'll push real hard, got a nice thick line. Push really soft, you get a nice thin line. So we will be using that technique on how to do trees. So before I even begin painting, I want to give a few reminders on how to paint them. Your trunk is always going to be the thickest part of your painting. When you do a tree, it gets real thick, and then gradually the branches get a lot slimmer. So make sure your branches aren't thicker than your trunk. I'll also be doing some techniques on how to do leaves, and as far as distance goes, if you have multiple trees and you want them to look like there's some in the background, will give some depth to your painting. So this is already sketched and drawn on here. I just have some blue and some white for the sky, and here's our grass. So we'll go ahead and start with getting some black paint on your brush. I don't take it on, I kind of pull some off on the side here so I get both sides, but it's not too much. These are acrylics, they'll dry very fast, so frequently I'll have you dip your brush into your water bucket and reapply that paint. So I'm just gonna do black. What I'm gonna do first is I'm gonna start way up into the sky, however tall you want your tree, and then I'm gonna come all the way down into my grass. So I'm gonna do a big tree. I'm going to start off with the pointy part facing the sky, and I'm push really easy. We're going to get that thin line, and then gradually push harder to get that thicker line for the trunk. Come way up here, push really easy, and push harder and harder as you get down. And then you'll have a nice trunk. Now occasionally you will have to go and add some more paint and thicken it up just to make it a little more neat. Maybe I'll put some roots down here. Doesn't have to be completely flat. There we go. Now what I'm gonna do, same concept as going really skinny and then getting wider on the bottom. We're gonna do the same thing for our branches. So our branches are gonna start way out and get gradually a little thicker, not as thick as the base of your trunk, but pretty thick towards the inside. Now, as you see, here's a good thing on how to fix any mistakes. Before we begin, I want to show you this part got a little thicker than my trunk. So to correct that, just take your brush and make your trunk a little thicker, and that corrects your problem. So if that ever happens to you, it's a great way to fix it. So I'm going to add a little more of my black paint. I'll bring my paints over here. And I'm gonna just create a bunch more. I'm gonna pull some off the top of my canvas, push harder as you go to your trunk. I'm gonna make some of these big branches first. Let's see here, I'm gonna grab some more black. Maybe I'll put one right here. Now I'm making sure I don't make them all straight. You want to have some curve to your branches. So go ahead and put as many as you'd like. And once you have your big branches, we're gonna go on to your smaller branches. This is where you can switch to your little tiny detail brush. If you have a heavy hand and you seem to be getting those thicker lines, you're not really comfortable using this brush, you can switch to this brush. I'll go ahead and use it so you can see. Because there aren't as many brushes to work with on the little one, you're gonna need to water it down a lot more. It doesn't hold as much paint. So what I'm gonna do, when you think of a branch, think of the letter Y. I'm gonna start real small and then start pulling in some branches, little tiny ones, into the big ones. So now as you see, they kind of look like the letter Y. You're just gonna add a bunch of them. And then you can add smaller ones off of those. And you can get as crazy with it as you want. Now again, you push really lightly. Pretend like you're barely touching the canvas here to get those little teeny tiny strokes. Barely touch the canvas. Really water down your paints. You're just gonna pull a bunch of those off. Now I'm gonna use my flat angle brush. You can see what those skinny lines look like. I just used the very tip of the brush. And again, you want to keep curving your lines. You don't want them straight. Now I'm not going to get too crazy because I'm going to show you a trick with how to fill in spaces when you add leaves. Now if you're doing no leaves, if you're doing a winter tree, you want to add a lot of those branches. But if you're going to have it a nice sunny day, which I got green here, it's not a snowy season yet, so I'm going to be adding leaves. Up here, for example, before I teach you how to do the leaves, I'm just going to do a quick demonstration so you can see. So this way you don't waste your time putting all these branches in. I'm going to dab in some leaves, even though there wasn't a branch there. And look at that. You would never know I didn't put a branch there. It just saves you a lot of time. In the middle here, I'll go and dab on some. You would never know. So I'm gonna go and do one more tree so you can kind of see how they look if you want some depth to your painting. I'm gonna go ahead and reapply my black. Now to make it look like there's some in the distance, I'd make them the same way, but I make them smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. And you see now it looks like this big one's more in the front and this one's in the back. And you'll just go ahead and make your branches off of that. Now this one doesn't have to be as detailed. It's way in the back, so you're going to have smaller branches. So if you have a hard time again, use your little tiny brush to make those small, skinny branches. Now look at that. It looks like there's little trees in the background. Now I'm going to go and thicken back up my trunks, because those are always supposed to be the thickest part. Now again, when you are going to be doing branches, you can use your round brush or your little tiny brush if you really want to get detailed, but I want to just make it nice and simple and quick. So I'm going to use both so you can see what they look like. When I do branches with my flat angle brush, I'm going to use the very top pointy part. So I'm going to dip into my black and poke and dab. And you'll start to see that it almost makes a shape of an actual leaf. Just how the brush is. I kind of curve my brush, twist it as I dab, so you get all those different designs. Isn't that amazing what your brush can do? And you'll go ahead and fill it in. Now again, here I don't have the branches. And I'm gonna go ahead and dab in between there. And you'll do that once you have all your trees. Look how fast I'm going. This doesn't have to be perfect. The smaller the tree, you'll kind of do smaller dabs. So I poke real lightly to get smaller leaves. I'll go ahead and switch to this brush so you can see how that looks. I'm going to add one more big tree right in the front here. I'm going to start way up high, and I'm going to pull this one way down. I'm going to thicken it up a little bit. I'm going to make my trunk real big. Sometimes those trees have like those little knots in them. You can get as detailed as you want. You can make it come out a little bit, a little uneven. Doesn't have to be perfect. I'm going to bring up a big branch, and you can even overlap onto these trees. This is in the foreground. This is in the front here. Get your big branches first, push a little harder, and come out softer. This is going to go off my canvas. Now here's a little mistake. Got real skinny coming in and thick out here, so just go back in and fix that by making that thicker. I'm going to add my little branches coming off, thinking of the letter Y. Pushing a little harder as I get into the trunk. Skinniest part is always going to be on the very out distant branches. So I'm going to make a few off of these, a few branches here. Don't get too detailed because my leaves are going to be covering it. Now I'm going to take this brush and I'm going to go ahead and start dabbing. Using the very tip, I'm going to go push on, off, on, off. I kind of twist my brush to get all these different little effects as I dab. You'll get some big ones, some little ones. I'm going to also fill inside the center to make it look like we had leaves here, or branches here. I'm going to keep adding some paint. Now I'm pushing a little heavier because this tree's in the front. I want this nice and full. It's a nice summer day. We're going to really fill this in. Now again, you're going to go over top of these trees here. This is a big, big tree in the front. I'm going to leave a little bit of background sky color showing so you can kind of see through the leaves a little bit, but you can get as crazy as you want with these leaves. Especially if you're going to be using colors. You can have as many colors and shades that you want, but this is the basic on how to do trees. One last thing you want to remember at the very end is take a look at your trunk. Sometimes when they dry, you can see through You just want to make sure they're nice and filled in. So I'm going to go back and fill those in. And just double check to make sure your trunks are always bigger than the upper part. Another thing too, when you're painting, you can always thin down your black by adding a lot of water to make a watercolor. And you could add a nice cute little shadow. Look how nice that looks. And that's how you paint trees. Thank you so much for painting with me today, you guys.